Thank you for being here. We'll start by reading our mission statement.
Is there one?
Here you go. I have one.
Okay.
All right, the mission of the Oceanfront Enhancement Committee is to propose to RAC new ideas and perspectives that foster the continued ongoing positive transformation of the resort for locals and visitors. To that end, we agree that both creating and managing first-class events, programs, and aesthetics have been and will be successful at promoting a secure, inviting, festive, economically vibrant, and inclusive atmosphere. If you folks have had a chance to look through the last two meetings minutes, if you have, and there's a motion to approve, entertain that.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes approved. We kicked the meeting off today with a really interesting speaker that I'm excited to hear. You know, one of the items handed down to this committee is to try to stay on top of and get an understanding of what the legalization of marijuana is going to do to our resort, what's it going to look like, how it's going to affect us and our perception that we present to our visitors. So we have our local expert on that, Charlene Moore. We had the privilege of meeting through our magazine conversations and whatnot, and it just seemed like such a logical next step for this committee to be informed and try to stay out in front, which is what we're charged with doing. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Charlene.
All right, staying out in front is very, very important, particularly when it comes to this issue. Thank you, Randy, for inviting me to sit down to speak to your group. I'm very, very excited about this morning. I am an attorney. I've been practicing law here in Virginia for 20 plus years. I'm also licensed in North Carolina. I happen to have been voted COVA's best lawyer and top law firm in Hampton Roads for last year. I went locally here to Old Dominion University, where I was a Kaufman Scholar. And if you don't know a little bit about Charles Kaufman, he was big on one big thing: community. And so I have always, since high school and college, been really big on community, which is why I was excited about Randy asking me to come here to kind of educate. Although I'm a lawyer, I'm not here to give legal advice today, all right? I am one of the few attorneys in this state that's decided if it's coming to my community, I want to know what it's about. I want to know how and what it's going to look like. I've done a lot of research personally to ensure that it looks right for me and my community. And so I have seen a lot in visiting other states, in talking with legislators, and reading the legislation, which I have basically slept with for the past year almost. And so I spoke at Virginia Beach's first CannaCon, and it was interesting. I want to tell you that it was held at the convention center. There were a lot of things that went on that shouldn't have been going on. Okay? All right. So much so that the manager of the place came running to me during my presentation and was just like, I don't know what to do. This is happening. This is happening. There were sales of seeds. There were lots of smells. There were lots of interactions that was not consistent with the law. But because she hadn't been educated, she didn't understand what she could do. She didn't know if she could call here for his folks and say, hey, can you come out here? Because everybody thinks, okay, it's July 1st, they decriminalized this stuff, it's an open season. So I'm here today to kind of just educate you all on what I know, and to take as many questions as you can give me. I don't have the answers. As a matter of fact, this PowerPoint is outdated as of Monday. All right, there's new administration in, and there's new things coming down from separate people, House members, Senate members, and so it's going to look different. The one thing that will remain the same, however, is cannabis is still coming. all right? And while at the time that I did this at CannaCon, it was slated for July 2024, the new deal is it's coming July 2023, all right? So there's a lot of buzz up in Richmond that it's coming, all right? So first things first, that remains the same. JLARC, which is a company the state hired, did lots of studies from other communities that are involved in this industry. And it is a $1.2 billion industry in revenue slated to be for the city, okay? So with that much money on the line, now Republicans and Democrats both are pretty much saying cannabis is coming, all right? So I'm here to talk to you guys because I'm one of the few attorneys that has braved getting ahead of this, because I believe that cottages and niche, I do workers' comp, that's a niche in law. Cannabis law is going to be a niche in law. A lot of people are not going to want to get around it. I'm a trustee in my church, you're going to get, I want to be educated. I want to be able for someone to come in and say, no, they can't do that. No, there's going to be a law about that. This is what should be more aggressive in the law. This is what should be lessened. And so I'm really here to talk to you guys about weed, money, and taxes. All right, that was supposed to be a joke. That's essentially what I'm here to talk about. So if we could go to the first slide, because what I can do is start talking about how this applies to really the retail group, but we just want to talk a little bit about what's coming down, what it was. And when I say what it was, there was legislation that was passed last April, Senate Bill 551, that decriminalized marijuana, and it also allowed for retail sales to come, all right? And so this just talks a little bit about that. The big piece that's changing now that happened just this week is there is new legislation that is going to allow more, and this goes to the policing piece, allows more for guidance to the police, all right? Because what I find that is troubling in it, there's a huge black market going on, y'all, okay? And it's serious. Everybody figured this happened July 1. Black market pop-ups, they are delivering marijuana and nobody knows what to do. And they're thinking they're legal, all right? They're having co-grows in their backyard, all things which are illegal. So, even though it's been decriminalized, the new legislation needs to address how to control this black market. That's already happening. And I can tell you it's happening right here in Hampton Roads. That concerns me, all right? And it concerns me for a couple reasons. If we're gonna do it right, the black market has to be controlled. And that means we're gonna have to make sure that the police have what they need structured in the legislation to control it. Okay, because they could open up retail sales and the black market is doing so well that state and localities never get their money or don't get their fair market share of what they should be getting in this industry. So there is legislation that just came up that's being proposed that would increase some of the penalties for individuals who are going against selling certain amounts, possessing certain amounts, which will allow the police to then have a little more control. Because what I saw personally with my own eyes at the convention center right here in Virginia Beach, it was very questionable, okay? So it would control that. So that piece is changing or should change based upon a recent, I'm just trying to get to the bill. The referral is pending, but basically it's basically to control that black market. Just think black market. And when you think black market, it's happening right now because everybody thinks because it's now legal, they could sell it on their own or say they can give it to their friend. But what's happening is there are people who are delivering it. They have mobile services that are delivering marijuana to the people in their homes.
Is the black market activities that are happening now, if you fast forward to July of 23, will those same activities be illegal then? Is it a matter of licensing and going through so we collect the right taxes, or is it the activities themselves would still be illegal?
The activities would still be illegal if they put the proper legislation and controls in the legislation. Right now, they don't have the proper legislation and the controls in the legislation to control it. Out in California, for instance, it's legal, but the taxes are so high that now they have this enormous black market for the product. So again, when you look at revenue, if you're gonna get in this game, who's gonna get in this game? They're gonna get in the game for the revenue. State wants the revenue. It's all about the dollar. They can't control that dollar. They can't get that dollar if they can't control the black market. So if anything that I say needs to change in the legislation, and I'm not Democrat, I'm not Republican, care. I just want it right, okay? That needs to change, okay? So you can go to the next slide.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do you think decriminalizing it before legalizing it has caused this black market? Or has the black market, I guess, always been there? Or did when you got decriminalized, all of a sudden people said, hey, it's decriminalized now, let me figure out how to get my hands on some?
So they put the cart before the horse. Bottom line. So now, cart got to try to catch up to the horse, and the horse is running around.
Right.
I'm sorry, my parents are old. My dad is 90, my mom is 84. We're country folks, so I'm a little old when it comes to my little analogy, so roll with me, okay? But that's exactly what happened. All right.
The underground market in this area though has been here since early 1960s, and it has an awful lot of experience that the state doesn't have in terms of how to market and move this product.
It does, but what decriminalizing did before they set up the retail is it gave them wings, a little more stronger wings to do what they needed to do. And I saw it firsthand right here in Virginia Beach Convention Center.
It's low risk.
It's low risk now. Exactly.
How does the punitive part of that, enforcing the black market, how does that compare to, say, moonshine whiskey?
Well, I think the way they have set it up now is the ABC, Virginia's ABC laws, and the Cannabis Authority and the cannabis laws are set up similar, okay? But the penalties aren't, which is why the legislation needs to change. In order for Virginia and Virginians, because this whole legislation is they want to make Virginians rich. They want to make Virginians really engaged in this industry. This is for Virginian schools. It's for Virginia businesses. It's for Virginia people. All throughout the legislation, you see that, okay? But the biggest piece starts with this guy, all right? So they started the decriminalization, but it does need to be tighter.
Yeah.
It does need to be a little more stricter in order to control the black market, because like you said, it's been there. Now they just have a bigger wings to do what they need to do. And then this 1.2 billion that could occur annually, by the way. And this is just from the tax revenue. We're not talking about the ancillary services that are going to result from this industry. That's not even including that. This is just the tax revenue from that, okay? And so this just kind of talks a little bit about how we lighten the load and kind of open the door for this black market to kind of fill. This is the law. There are criminal penalties that exist, but there's legislation right now being talked up, being worked through. So there's more guidance, and I'll be more than willing to educate any police department that I can about what they can and cannot do. But right now we don't have much, okay? So it's pretty light. So everybody's pretty happy. The citizens are very happy. But I'm sure some of the retail owners, restaurant owners, hotel owners are scratching their head as to what to do, okay? So that's the law as it relates to that. You can go to the next slide. They talk about, this is a little bit about that black market type thing. So they decriminalize it. Past marijuana convictions can now be sealed from employers and school administrators. I believe there's been some automatic expungements that have been done for some people. People are allowed to grow and cultivate. There is a business, and I won't name any names, but all they do is sell plant, I guess, they sell the stuff that you can grow your own cannabis plants, okay? And so that's like an ancillary business that is supporting this black market or this at-home grown market. And now you got civil penalties instead of criminal penalties and things of that sort. This is the big thing. So even though Virginia has done this and has joined, I believe, 25 other states, cannabis is still federally illegal. It is a drug, a RICO drug. It is by the Drug Enforcement Agency classified as a drug. All right. So the biggest thing that creates a whole other issue, I can really talk about this for a long time, so try to rush it, is you can't put this money in a bank. Okay? There is legislation called the Safe Bank Act that has been trying to be passed for years now to ensure that the people that are engaged in this industry can at least put their money in a bank. Again, I've been in cultivation houses. I've been in grows around the country. The scariest thing is only one has shown me where their safe is, and it's about as big as safe you could ever imagine. It is a cash business. Security is big, okay? So federal hasn't caught up to state. That's a big, big problem. Again, that's a stressor for local police, and that's a stressor for anyone who decides to engage in this industry.
Also seems like some ingredients for organized crime too.
Well, so under Obama, what happened was they sent out a memorandum and said they're not going to prosecute, they're not going to do anything about these businesses. As a matter of fact, the IRS wants more than the state and the localities. If you're engaged in this business, you're going to be guaranteed you're going to be audited each year. All right? They want their money. They know it's there. They're not coming after you. But it creates a banking issue, which creates a security issue. Okay? So from a banking perspective, and I thought about this in the last 2 weeks, my research shows that there are only certain banks in the nation that will actually house this money. And most of the people in this industry go to community banks. And they're charging, the banks that do house the money are getting, I said, well, maybe I can do it. They're charging like $2,000 each deposit. So I said, maybe I can just get it. What's the criteria for operating a bank? That sounds like a really good thing now that's coming to Virginia. So call me if you want to hold up a bank. I'll serve on your board and we'll get it started. Because the only ones that are doing it are community banks, credit unions. The big guys are.
So when these people put the money in the bank, they have to tell them they're getting it from selling marijuana?
Yeah. So you're going to get a license. And if you don't tell, and if you do not, Well, this is the deal. The bank is not going to risk. You know, anytime we've all opened bank accounts, particularly for our businesses, they're going to want to operate agreement. They're going to want to nature the business. A federal bank or a bank, most big banks don't want to touch it. They don't want the risk. They don't want Big Brother knocking on their door. So they kick these guys out. I have talked to at least tens of dozens of them that says the scramble is finding where you can put your money. Another good ancillary business is a good tax accountant, lawyer, as well as payroll. I've spoken with these industry professionals, and I know really good industry professionals that know how to couch the money, tell them what portion of the money needs to go in this bank and vice versa. Their corporate structure is key. But bottom line is, it's cash. And that Safe Bank Act has not been passed. It needs to be passed because, in my opinion, I've been approached by a lot of good people that want to set up businesses. But once I really get down to the nitty gritty, this is going to be cash. You're not going to be able to set anything other than that.
How do the shops like in some of the really, like Aspen that has a really, like a jewelry store, I mean, aren't they taking credit cards?
Okay. Yeah. They're taking debit.
But not credit cards.
Not credit cards. And some have engaged in illegal activity where they set up reverse debits to make it look like the person got cash at their shop and deposited directly into their business. And there's a whole crackdown on those ATMs. They're illegal. There's going to be a lot of, until they do the Safe Banking Act, it just makes it difficult for someone like the worst person in Aspen that wants to do it straight up,
right,
to really do it. They're going to tell you, bring your cash. We need to have point of sale. We need to clear it. Because if the bank finds out, they risk their money. And the bank doesn't want to risk Big Brother coming for them. So that's again, I can talk about this forever, but that's a huge issue, and it's a valid one. And it goes back to security and making sure our legislation gets it right. And kind of like right now, the big pharma is coming. So we already know that basically in hemp processors. So they already know where to put the money and what to do. And so they have the advantage in that realm. But I don't know if they're going to be putting the money here locally, which is what we want. Okay, community, getting the revenue in all means and aspects. Okay? All right, I told you, weed, money, and taxes. This is what it was about. Next one. All right, so what they have done, there's legislation, they want to end the term marijuana and replace it with cannabis and everywhere in the act. So they enacted this, but it has to be reenacted. It's going to look completely different. We know that. But they will make sure that the term marijuana doesn't exist. It's going to be cannabis everywhere. Okay? That is one of the things that they, I saw some legislation that's been, and I agree with that. Everybody pretty much understands what cannabis is. And there's been so many negative connotations with marijuana. I think they're trying to make it more of, this is what we're doing. This is cannabis. Cannabis is good. It has some good effects. And so that kind of goes to marketing and making sure that everybody's on board with why Virginians getting into this. It does have some good effects. All right. And, well, let's talk about this. So the Virginia Cannabis Control Authority. So that still exists. They've had their first 1 or 2 meetings. It contains 5 individuals who basically, they're going to control the licensing process. All right. So once we get the final legislation down pat, there's going to be authority that's going to control who gets a license. All right. That hasn't changed. There's a guy, and if you can go to the next slide, his name may be there. So these are the members as it now stands. All right, you're gonna hear a lot of other names, a lot of other boards that have to do with the Virginia Cannabis Authority. These are the ones that matter. All right, why? Because these are the ones that are gonna determine who gets the license. All right. Neil is, I guess he's worth about 800 million or so. Michael Massey is a local attorney in the district with Louise Lucas. Rasheed Creighton, she's from Richmond. She's just an advocate of community. Shane Emmett and Bet. I'm a fan of Roanoke. I love the Hotel Roanoke. So she's from that great area, just to protect the western part of the state, I believe. And I believe that's important because it looks a little disproportionate, doesn't it? There's no Northern Virginia there. Of course, Virginia Beach. Nobody really wanted to get their hands in it, I guess. But and then there's Shane Emmett, Midlothian, which is another Richmond. So 3 out of the 5 are from Richmond. So that's going to be interesting because they've already set, and again, I don't know if it's going to change, but they've already set how many licenses are going to be issued. And so this is the board that's going to vet those applications. So every person that wants, or applicant that wants to apply is going to have to go through a vetting process, and that vetting process is going to be set up by this board.
What's the is it the laws committee for the legislature that's overseeing this? Which committee of our delegates is?
There's a joint commission oversight.
Okay.
That oversees all of this. And there are several other boards. So they have the licensing portion, they have a health portion, they have a social reinvestment portion, and there are board members all over. I would encourage each of you, and I could send some links, because they need people. And most people, like these people, will be paid. They were assigned by the governor. These serve a little bit different. But there are other boards, vacancies that have been kind of crowded. Some people have left, some people not. But it's important that we have people all across the board from our community. And I just can't commit the time to it, but I really do think it's important that we volunteer in some capacity to kind of know what's going on as this thing goes live. Okay?
Are they doing the number of licenses just throughout the state, or is it region, city, population?
That's a good question. Go to the next one. So JLARC, which is the JLARC, I'll answer your question, and then there's another slide. JLARC, which is the company designed to kind of research all of this. They took the state and looked at other industries in other states, and they came up with the number of licenses based upon the population. Okay, so the licenses are varied depending upon group, and we'll get into that. I actually have the breakdown. And so we'll get into, how many. What's going to be interesting, and what really kind of affects all of us, is there will be a local opportunity to opt out of this. Okay? That's going to be put on as a referendum. There's a challenge right now as to how that's going to be with, and I believe it was Delicate Ware has put that out. And basically, in 2021, localities wishing to prohibit retail sales would be fiscally responsible for holding the such referendum. The new bill appears to be instead to shift the financial burden to localities wishing to comport with state law and allow legal retail sales. All right, so here's the long and short of it. Okay, they want to really stress to the localities, this is good for you. All right, in the tax revenue estimates. All right, so you figure Uncle Sam is gonna get 25%. All right. The state is gonna get around 24. And then there's gonna be an opportunity for locality tax. Can be huge. Now, I can talk numbers all day, but what I can tell you is what I saw. Okay? I've been in Colorado, met with several people. I go to Denver. Portion of the airport is beautiful. It's nice. It's gorgeous. Go downtown Denver, and I'm like, where am I? It's so clean, even with the homeless population. Then I go out to Colorado Springs, and it looks like 1984. Okay? Colorado Springs chose the local referendum option. So they didn't get any of that money. And they're making somebody at the edge of their corner really rich because someone decided to bring a retail shop and the line is off and it's like night and day.
Yeah.
Who got the money, who didn't get the money, you can tell.
Right.
All right. So I think what Ware is doing with this is saying, yeah, localities, you can opt out. Think twice before you do. All right. Because what you're doing is you're opting out of money.
Are you opting out of state money as well as the local money?
No, I think you're opting out of that tax revenue that's going to come from cannabis.
But from the state sales tax on it,
Yeah.
as well as your
Yes.
local. Yeah.
You're opting out. You're saying you can't do anything in Colorado Springs.
Right.
You can do CBD, which we have those pop-ups all over the place. Whole nother issue, but yeah. So and so that is something that just hit. Where just gave that on earlier this year, and so that's House Bill 43, and that's the chief patron is Delegate Lee Ware. He's a Republican. He knows that this is about money, and he wants to send that message to the locals. There is also Ware, I don't know who has his ear, but they're smart. He's also proposing things to prohibit like the seeds and the plants, because one of the things that happened at the Virginia Beach Convention Center was they were selling seeds and plants. And they were saying, well, it doesn't have the THC yet. We can do this. This is legal. I'm sure he's heard it. So having legislation that kind of controls every piece of it from seed to sale is what the state wants to do. And so this is why some of the things in the current legislation has to be corrected. Because if we really want to control it, we should be able to track it from the time it blooms, whatever it does, until it's sold. Okay? And when you start getting to areas where you can't track it, that's where you open up the floodgate for the black market a little more. Okay? Social equity, I believe, is not going to be. All right? There was a lot of questions when I spoke at CannaCon about social equity. Unfortunately, I think what happened with the initial legislation, I think it was a little bit too broad. And it said if you had this, if you had that, if you graduated from a black college, you know, where you live, all of these things, that almost anyone could get a license and basically go to the top of the line. So what happened was people started to, where you live, getting somebody, he got, you know, convicted of marijuana. And so, you know, I don't think, based upon subcommittee discussions as well as the chatter that I've been hearing, that much of this is going to remain. I think what's going to happen is they will allow some mechanism of social equity applicants. We all know it's not an elephant in the room, it's just facts. African Americans, blacks are historically targeted and have been convicted of these crimes across the nation, including our own localities, at a far greater rate than anybody else. And so this legislation, the social equity piece, is not something that just propped it up in Virginia. It is a national conversation. It is something that everybody knows, okay? And so the social equity piece is not to give anybody a jumping in line per se. It's just to say, this used to really affect you, and now we're about to make a lot of money off that same thing. How can we correct it? That's what the social equity piece is about, trying to correct something. And so there's some discussion about putting up, they have a social equity reinvestment board. So there's a recent legislation that's from a Republican that talks about having that the fund and contributing to not only applicants that may apply whatever criteria they have, but also to schools that need it. Reinvesting some of their money to schools that need new roofs. I think it was. They said there's a lot of schools out here that need assistance in getting up to par. So social equity is still on the table, but I don't know how much of it, as it was, will stand. So that's just one thing that we will have to wait and see. The business reinvestment funds still exist, so they're growing. I would encourage you to look it up. They need members, So when the money does come down the pipe, where is it going? There's a board for that. There's a business equity and diversity support team. So there's opportunities for us as the localities to kind of serve to see where this, hopefully, tax revenue will go. Okay? And if you grab the next one, I'll try to go because I'm telling you, I know this stuff. All right, so this is old because this says right to retail cannabis in Virginia, July 1st. Both sides, both Democrats and Republicans, are really pushing for 2023. But if I may curse, I think it's gonna look like a shit show. Okay? Again, blame my parents. All right? I'm sorry. I'm just real. I think it goes directly to what you said about putting the cart before the horse. What happened was they said, oh, we're gonna decriminalize it. We got this black market that's brewing. Everybody knows about it. Now they realize it, so now they want to fast track it. They need buildings, they need money, they need appropriations, they need a lot of stuff. Then they got to finalize and fine tune the licensing process, the laws, and they got just a few months to do it. All right, and then it's a race to a license, July 1st, 2023. So it's going to be interesting what it looks like. I think we'll eventually will calm it and calm the stomach, but for now, I just think it's going to be interesting. Next slide. These are the particular licenses available to Virginians right now. This is something that's not there that I'm still not hearing talking about, okay? You see retail, we all know what retail looks like. Now, under the current legislation, the biggest thing you need to know is they control how big that retail space is, okay? Right now, the current legislation said it can't be more than 1,500 square feet. All right, so, and the retail piece is what you control, the locality. All right, the retail piece, big level of control there. That can go on local referendum. You can completely eradicate that market if you put it on and you opt out. Manufacturing. So this is where it gets interesting because people understand, well, what's manufacturing? What's the difference between cultivation and manufacturing? In the cannabis industry, cultivation is grow. So they say grow, okay? That is where you're actually taking the seed, you're going through the whole process, and you're actually growing the cannabis. The manufacturing, they have it in the legislation. That's more of the people that want to turn it into the gummies. They want to turn it into the oils, the skin products, or perhaps manufacture it and put it into food and things of that sort. And the wholesale, that's typical. That's the mid guy. He's going to go to the cultivation guy, get as much as he can. He may even go to manufacturing guy, and then he may wholesale the products in between. All right. What don't you see that we talked about? Transportation. Why can't we control that?
Federal highways?
Well, not necessarily. We can, JARC actually put in a recommendation for a transportation license. Another little business. but I'm always thinking business, but it also controls that black market. We got Uber Eats, we got DoorDash. I don't know, last time I really did serious shopping in a store because of Amazon. You got the market now is for convenience, right? You have to understand, and I don't know if any of you guys know this, but for Virginia, the main people that they say are going to be walking into a retail shop are 60 and over. It's going to be your mom and pop. It's going to be my father, and I'll tell you a little story. I'm serious, who's 90. The only reason why I really got interested in this is because he had glaucoma, and he was losing his eyesight, and his physician told him, well, all I can tell you is at this point, had you smoked marijuana, you wouldn't be here. My father has blue eyes, but he's blind now. Okay? And so I began to kind of look at the effects. And so, wouldn't it be nice if someone can deliver that? And also, I think it would be more of a better concern for security and police if we can control, all right, wholesaler, you got to make sure that you also have a vertical license to transport it. So we know who's on the streets with all of this, because otherwise you have a California situation, you have that black market situation that we have an opportunity right now to kind of control and get ahead of. And I'm not hearing anyone talk about it. So it's going to be interesting. Why they not? Go next. And then I'll take numbers. So this is how it looks right now. The good folks in Richmond says about 25 people going to be in wholesale. 25 businesses, 60 in manufacturing. Woo woo! We're gonna be stuck with some. I hope it's not skunk stuff. 400 in retail, and the young kids know exactly what I'm talking about. And 450 in cultivation. Still don't know how that's gonna land, but little Scuttlebug, again a little old term, says that. Northern Virginians are going to try to take a lot of this stuff. All right. This is why I'm here. If there's 1.2 billion, then I want Hampton Roads, I want Virginia Beach, I want everybody. We need to have our revenue in our area. All right. So we can have year-round destinations. So we can attract certain people that may not want to walk into the retail shop at home, but would come out of town to do it, because that's exactly what I did. All right, as I did my research and I hit the ground, I threw on my jeans and I transversed, and I've seen it done the bad way and I've seen it done the good way. Okay, and I tell you, it can be done right and it can be done clean. It has to be strict. All right, I can tell you I'll go back to Denver any day now. Mm-hmm. I don't smell it. You have certain things that they have to identify. Shops are nice, and it's controlled.
They look like jewelry stores in a lot of places.
Right, in a lot of places. So we don't want it to go the opposite way. And I'm going to be honest, what I'm seeing is a lot of companies have tried to get their foot in the door by putting up certain shops, and they've contacted and communicated with me thinking they're just going to transfer their current space into a retail shop. Not going to happen because of the locality and because of the licensure process. So there's no assumptions that's going to be made for anybody.
Do you see any talk of, or I guess this could be a local issue of how much control locality would have over how it's merchandised? Like you said, there's some really nice high-end merchandising, and then there's tattoo shop equivalent or whatever.
Right. And yeah, right. And so one of the things that the state, and actually this is, they're trying to change. The state law is very strict on how it's gonna be merchandised, how it's gonna be controlled, everything. You can't even, under the current legislation, I love it, if you hold a ABC license, you can't hold a cannabis license.
What's the point of that? What's the intent on that?
Well, I think it's a matter of double dose. I think it's smart.
Well, what happens if a business owner has multiple restaurants and holds multiple ABC licenses? I mean, what's the difference between?
Well, I believe they're trying to ensure that the right people get in the market for the right reason. And so if you hold the ABC license over here and you hold the cannabis license over here, you might be precluding someone else who's never held such a license from getting into an industry. I believe. I'm speaking from just my personal thoughts and as to why they would do that. But the big reason I think it's smart, okay, is just for effects. Okay, it's alcohol and cannabis. They have also created a health board to kind of oversee this. So I think, aside from the business aspect, I think from a health perspective, it makes sense.
So
If that makes sense.
Way for cannabis to distance itself from the ill effects of alcohol.
Well, I mean, every place, I think they've also modeled it from Colorado.
Yeah.
You're not gonna go in a Colorado dispensary and be able to purchase alcohol. All right, so they wanna be able to control that. It's a control thing. They're gonna have the control board. Again, I'm just speaking from my experience for what I've seen. I don't know if that was the meaning behind it.
It does seem like the Virginia ABC has a mechanism in place to administer controls just like this.
Right.
It seems kind of a shame to at least not borrow that
Well,
template
this,
almost.
right, and so, and this legislation is under the ABC. So it's literally, if you read the ABC board, it directly commented, they got the cannabis right in it. So I think it's just to make sure that they're maintaining that same sovereignty as far as the licenses and the possession of same.
But you said under the same roof, because I'm thinking what Michael's saying, he has a restaurant that has an ABC license, but if he wanted to open a cannabis
In a
retail
separate
location at a separate
Right.
location, he's precluded from being able to do that?
As it now stands, write it down, you are precluded. The law says you cannot hold. Now, it doesn't even have to do with where it says, the law says you cannot possess an ABC license and a cannabis license. That's what it says
No
now.
cannabis products on the harvest menu, Michael.
He's already got the name.
Right. But that's, I mean, that's just what it says. You know, because I've been approached by some restaurateurs that had that same question, and like I said, I'm not giving legal advice. I'm just telling you what it says. For now, it says you cannot possess.
What is that by entity? So if one corporation owns Harvest, but another corporation.
That's corporate structure. That would be the way you would see somebody like me on how to structure it. Okay.
Get a card.
Yeah.
I think I can understand the having dual licenses in the same. But it's kind of strange to not be able to kind of exclude somebody completely from getting a license just because they already have a ABC, which anybody else can get if they go through the process. In the state, you would think that somebody who holds an ABC license would already have everything record of showing good standing, and that would kind of, you would think that you would want somebody who does that to also have another license.
I agree. However, I'm just reporting what it says. I have no clue and no leverage in that regard. They seem pretty strict about it,
right?
But that has been something that I've had to tell several people. A lot of people have approached me that are in real estate. They want to get into it. Cool folks, women, a lot of women that want to get into retail. So it's kind of exciting talking to the people that want to get into it. And so, yes, so I think to answer the workaround, the current way it's written will be corporate structure, entity attorney. Yes.
What's been the perspective on already like large established businesses from these states that had it for a few years applying for licenses in Virginia? So like the the grows from Colorado, trying to see that opportunity that they already have this infrastructure to come to a new state?
Well, we're in Virginia. And Republicans were dead set against it initially. But once the numbers started to be demonstrated, there was pretty much a full consensus. We want it. However, the consensus remains, even from, we just got back from lobby day. They really want it for Virginians. They don't want Big Pharma. Now, Big Pharma is already here, and Big Pharma has already found ways and workaround to get around Virginians getting it. And that frankly upsets me. I don't get upset much, but I'm born and raised from Virginia, and both my parents from here, long history here in several parts of the state. So the intent of the legislation was to create generational wealth for us, for Virginians, for people who have resided here a year or more. So Big Pharma coming in is going to create monopoly, and it's going to drive, say he's able to do a corporate structure. It's going to make it hard for him to make money and for him to set up his business, because the outsider's going to come in. They're already there. They're already big. They already know. And I can tell you, I've seen, they're going to be vetted, okay? But what they're doing is they're creating businesses under businesses. They may have one big business and they got 50. All what they claim are separate businesses, but not. They're really truly under one umbrella. And they're coming because they already know that this is a billion-dollar industry. Last year alone, $28 billion of cash revenue was reported. Think about that.
That's just what.
Think about what wasn't. You get where I'm coming from. I mean, be honest. Think about what wasn't truly reported. 28 billion? Arizona, the medical and the retail started out. Medical was big, and retail started moving and moving and moving in 1 month. 58 million in revenue to the state.
So what you're saying is we're going to give Virginians the ability to grow, produce, keep it all in state.
As is now, and there hasn't been a lot of chatter about changing that. And I think that's a good thing.
And, well, it's concerning because initially the medicinal growers and manufacturers were supposed to be Virginia as well, but the bulk of them are major pharma.
Yep, and that's why I said Big Pharma is already here. And so what happened January 14th, and this is something that's still out there, so you guys, if you know anybody, start calling. So a hemp processor that has not done very well, okay, decided, well, we're going to just go up and we're going to try to convince. And so I'm going to talk a term, it's called vertical integration, okay? Vertical integration is for pharma that's already here, like the medical folks that are already here. They have the opportunity for a mere $1 million to vertically integrate and come in. Okay? So it goes exactly to what you're saying. All right? So they're not going to be from Virginians. But this is why they put cart before the horse. Because now they have to have somebody to provide it, because they put the cart before the horse. So now Big Pharma is saying, we're here and we're ready. And we got $1 million to stroke because we're going to make $1 billion.
But that 1.2 billion in tax revenue still comes to Virginia, regardless of who generated it, right?
It does, but where is it? The only one that we know is coming right now is Portsmouth. Where is it? Is it in the northern part of the state? What about the localities? The localities can really get a good piece of this and do good for their counties. That's where my community piece comes in at. That's why I'm here. I canceled a hearing. I wanted you guys to understand it's coming. It has to be done right. so we all can eat. And if Big Pharma is located somewhere and doesn't care, and then cloaks and gets somebody to get a retail license, does not want to be controlled, then we get a mess. So to your point, right now, vertical integration, which is Big Pharma, medical cannabis, folks who want to get in this business, there's legislation that says they can do it for $1 million. It's a cool mill. All right, and they are up and running. Now, there's discussion on whether or not that should be increased. But that's a little bit of politics. You know how that goes. The other piece is hemp. So before it was just the medical, vertically integrate for $1 million, and the regular licensing process. Hemp has lobbied and said, oh, we haven't done well. Allow us to join the medical folks and get in the game. That's exactly what he's saying. So now they're talking about co-oping, independent contracting. We don't know who these people are. We don't know if it's Virginia. It's a bit of a mess. But we think the legislators are convinced and they're going to let them do it because they're trying to get to 2023 and have product out there.
That's what I was going to ask. If you're going to do it in 23, someone's got to be growing it and getting ready to manufacture. Otherwise, you're not going to have any product.
Right. Yep. So they've persuaded, I believe that part of it will be changed. So they'll be allowed to get in the game. Now, whether or not they'll require the $1 million or whether or not they'll require they apply for a license, I think there is some discussion as to how hemp gets in. But yeah, that's a whole nother way of taking away from a local person a Virginian that wants to get in.
Why is it? It seems like that pyramid is a little bit upside down. It strikes me as odd that cultivation is more than retail.
They did cultivation based upon the population and wanting to ensure that there was enough, I think.
I mean, it seems to go against the big farmer because I'm thinking of that as like giant pot farms.
Yeah.
As opposed to a whole lot of little growers that are selling through their wholesaler.
Yeah, well, I think what's going to be challenging to anyone who gets into this industry is marketing. Who you're marketing to, where. And so right now, the way they have it set up is a business to business. And just like an ABC license, it can be taken away. So there's room for correction there. There's oversight in every piece of the licensing process. So I think, there's not going to be 450 here. And anybody that knows the best marijuana is truly grown inside. I mean, you can grow it outside in greenhouses. We're just not California where we have that sun. I've been out there and it's so great. But the quality products are, there's a way to grow those. You still need land. You still need real estate that plays a part of that, but not as much as you would think. You wouldn't think you need as much. You can do 40,000 pounds, a year. It just really depends upon the structure, what you're growing in the industry, what type of product you're growing, how much you're growing, your process to grow, and all of that can be done under a building, really, not necessarily
No top window box.
So, in the current legislation that we have, it says facility. Does facility mean indoor or outdoor, or is it when it talks about growing and manufacturing? I guess my concern is there going to be outdoor grows right in the heart of, or is it a facility mean it needs to be indoors, or have they defined it?
No, they haven't defined it, but what I can tell you is there's going to be restrictions. So you're not going to be, basically you're not gonna be able to be near like schools and churches, you know, things like that, things that are natural, you know, like mostly you're looking at commercial areas, warehouse areas, things like that for the indoor grows facilities. There's a lot of talk, and I just find, knowing what I know about cannabis, you know, the farming piece, I know it can be farmed, but the people that really know cannabis don't like farm cannabis. So I call it the street team. So I know people of high and low places. They don't want that stuff because they think it's cross-pollination exists, it's bad, you know. You get cross-pollination, you know. Marijuana is a plant that blooms at female. So if you get it where you get any cross-pollination, and then when you talk about farms, you know, there's a lot of talk about farms, but suppose that blows into your yard, and then you start growing marijuana. And how is that going to be controlled? So I typically don't like the farm concept, but that's just a personal preference because I just see so many, legally, I see so many problems of like, oh, does that create an easement? And with that person, you know, can I now go in your yard and grab your marijuana because your marijuana kind of flew in my yard? So to me, I just kind of, my legal mind kind of ruminates when it talks about the farming piece because it's very fragile. And when you start talking about farming in our area, you just really have to get with growers that know what they're doing and kind of have the space to more so do that. And that's when big farmers, so they're talking to farmers and things of that sort and trying to control it, but they're also shipping in and doing illegal stuff to get it here.
Will people be able to get more than, like if I'm a retailer, would I be able to get a cultivation manufacturing license?
Call your legislator. That needs to change.
To
get one.
Just get one. Well,
there's no way you can make money really.
Hey, the best looking CBD shop I ever saw was in Gatlinburg, and it had a room full of plants, and at night that thing lit up like a neon sign with, I guess, the grow lights in it, and it just drew people in there. It was very high class type place. It's all supposedly CBD, but it was amazing merchandising. Right, and it's a lot of that around, and that's how Colorado did it. However, I think Virginia, in its desire to try to control a little bit too much, it's not good business. You need to be able to market your stuff and have the opportunity to retail it, because then you have the best relationship with the state to show them, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm selling, this is how much you're getting. They're big on farm to table.
And I've spoken to other I've spoken to other cannabis owners, particularly in Chicago, Colorado, and Michigan. And all of them said the same thing. That's the worst thing you guys could do, is to limit somebody. Because that's when you're going to get the guys who are just, you know, in and out. They're not going to be successful. All right. They're not going to get it right. Everybody doesn't have business acumen on how to market themselves and things of that sort. How is a little farmer going to get in contact with manufacturing or retail?
Right.
If all he knows is the dirt. Right? So having the ability to at least partner or hold multiple licenses, sort of like to his point with the ABC thing, allows for more fluidity. If you know business, you know that's the way to go. All right. Not everybody's going to want to do it. Right. But if you have the desire to not only grow but sell your own product, you'll be able to contribute faster to that revenue dollar. And the dollar is what the state wants.
One control point too.
Yes. Yes.
When they came up with the number of licenses for like the retail, did they know it was a 1,500 square foot limitation? And does that include like storage? And I mean, it just seems really small. I mean, this room's probably about 1,500.
It is. Oh, I think, and again, it's definitely going in dispensaries around the nation. I think it's all about, again, just controlling. There is, most of the time when you go in a dispensary, particularly like Colorado, because they do it right, you're gonna have to present a license. And any place, and we call it the cannabis touching place. So the place may be big, but the area, the retail space itself has to be controlled. So you may walk in one door that is as big as this room, but it's a holding space for someone that's gonna lock you in when you get in the other door. You're gonna present a license to show you're of age. Then you're gonna actually enter into the actual retail space. And the ones that have done it right, you locked in. All right, you go and it's a small space, you get your stuff, you look around. And I've done this so I know how it looks, because I'm not saying, I'm a classy lady, so I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that we do it right. I've never been into a place that I didn't feel right about. And so they lock you in. So that actual space for you to sell the cannabis touching products is what they're referring to. I think you can get a larger space, but most of the places have built out a space in a space to accommodate the restriction. Right, and I think that's for security too. You don't want too many people in there at one time. Stealing, cash, right? It's security. You're dealing with a cash-only business. So I think there's a security mechanism involved in that as well.
I was just thinking, like Ray's talking about Aspen, but and I was just in Vegas not long ago. I mean, they have beautiful display cases, and it's like a jewelry store kind of flow to it. But I didn't go in any that I think were 1,500 square feet.
Right.
They all had room for you to
walk
move
around
freely and ask questions and all that type of thing.
I'll have to find out what their restrictions are. I will definitely let you know. Yeah.
Colorado, though, you get that little tiny room, and they keep you there until you can go in. And
Is there a breakdown on how these are going to be distributed amongst the localities? And if so, do they know how they're going to go about finding out how many go to each locality?
So that board that we talked about is going to be tasked with that. The Joint Commission oversight is going to be tasked with that. I think it's still up in the air. Again, there's some scutterbug. That Northern Virginia wants to grab up a lot. We need to get our fair share in order to be competitive around the state, because there are going to be tourists that come and they're going to want to partake, and because they're on vacation and they can't do it in their state, and I'm going to be honest with you. And so you want to make sure that that year-round destination pieces can happen through our fair share. I think we'll get decent, and I think that will be because of Louise Lucas. She's already in the industry. And so once it goes live, I'm sure she'll have one. And so I think that she will ensure that our area, the entire area, not just Portsmouth, but the entire area gets their fair share of this, because her and Evan were pretty much the proponents of the initial legislation. So I think we'll fare okay. It's really the concern, a lot of the concern has not been for our area getting into it and getting our fair share of licenses, but the western part of the state, but just imagine if they did get one, it may be the only shop. They fare pretty well, but it still needs to be competitive, and we still need to spread the love.
Were these intended as limits or estimates?
Right now, they're strict.
So that's a limit right now.
Right, and I checked as much as this morning. I'm a member of a couple of the International Association of Lawyers for Cannabis, as well as NORMA, which kind of follows legislation, again, to educate people like you, to make sure that what I'm saying is authentic and organic to the industry. And I haven't seen anything about those numbers changing. You know, JLARC made the recommendation, so if they make additional recommendations, but you know, at some point, things get lost in the weeds. So I've been sleeping with the weeds and talking, as you can tell, for a long time. A lot of people don't want to. They have no desire to learn anything about this. But the industry is very finicky, and it's huge. It's huge. I mean, we haven't even talked about the ancillary markets that could come up, businesses that could really benefit from this industry. But get ready, because it's coming. I think I have way overextended my talk time, which I knew that would happen. I am more than welcome and open to come in and talk again. I am following all of the legislation. I am doing as much as I can to lobby for what's right for our community and what the community wants. So if there's anything that you guys feel is necessary, that is needed, you know, like the question. You know, a lot of times you're talking to politicians and they get lost in the weeds. I think about those weeds and what does it look like? Transportation, security, policing, things of that sort. Feel free to shoot me those. I would be more than happy to share. I'd be more than happy to put it on as much and out there as much as possible, because we don't have much time. This is coming down the pipeline quick, fast. There's at least 10 bills right now. Once they pass the House, they'll go to Senate. And if they go for 2023, I don't want any of us scrambling to find out what it is. So I think you guys have a good head start as to what it looks like. Discussing the local piece is huge. What that referendum would look like, that's a long-term vision decision. I'm not a part of it. Okay? You guys are. All right? This is your city. So it's very important that you think about that long and hard. All right?
Mike's got one more.
Yeah, I think the goal of this body as the Resort Advisory Commission is to advise City Council on what we think would be best for the resort area. With that being said, should we think about possibly molding our zoning laws and coming up with certain things preemptively so that we're not scrambling as soon as everything becomes legal, and now all of a sudden the city itself is trying to scramble around and try and figure out where they want it sold and how it can be sold.
Right. So the legislation has taken care of a great deal of that, because you're not going to be able to sell within a certain feet. You're not going to be able to be near school zones and churches. So homes, residential areas, things of that sort. There's going to definitely be a lot of that is going to be controlled. There is talk in the same legislation, there's two things I forgot to tell you, about preventing the localities a lot of what you're talking about to preemptively zone it, because it kind of defeats the purpose for the state. So I forget the House bill, I want to say it's by where, but in any event, so you might want to be careful in doing that. However, there's gonna be a need for, all right, if you don't like the 1,000 feet, like if you only want one on the Oceanfront, you know, kind of discussing what that looks like, looking at the particular markets and how you want it, because, you know, the Oceanfront is long, so it can be one right here in the end, and what does that create, and how does that look? So that is really, that's going to really be determined by the final legislation, because the state is kind of acting like Big Brother a little bit when it comes to some controls.
So we want to look and see what that looks like, and then go back in and say, like, I saw 1,000 feet in there in your slides. Then maybe we want to make it 2,000, or maybe we want to do something different. We would have the ability to make that recommendation.
If they allow, make that recommendation to the council. The other piece is the tax piece. There is legislation to lessen the tax, and it's been done not from a local perspective, but I think from a state perspective, And that's being presented because they want to encourage people to get in this business and to do it the right way. And they don't want the black market to control. So that is where as well. And so his desire is we want to just cut out this black market. And one of the complaints is the taxes are so high. Every person that has sat down with me that says, I want to get a license, or can you tell me what you know about this? I say, think 50%. It's the only industry that you're not, this is 280E. So you're going to be taxed at 280E, which means your gross profit, nothing. Okay. And so they're looking to, and that's from federal, but they're looking to lower the taxes a little bit to allow people to kind of get in. So to that question, that could go to how they're going to structure the localities, because the theme that I'm hearing from both Republicans and Democrats is we want you guys in. So they don't want it to be so strict that people don't get in. So that's, that's the most I know about that is what I'm seeing.
Will the state control what the local tax limit is?
I think I had a slide about it. There was talk it was going to be anywhere between 10 and 11%. It's pretty significant.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like I said, I've seen it myself. I was like, oh, okay. There's a big difference from the local, and it's just money. You see where the money is flowing. You see who's getting it.
Are those numbers statewide or citywide?
It's statewide.
See, I don't see that that's even going to make a dent in the black market.
I think lowering the taxes will allow for retailers to sell it for a little bit cheap, or
But there are only going to be 60 in the whole state. Think of how many alcohol stores,
Oh,
ABC
60
stores there are in Virginia.
Yeah.
No,
Beach.
those are manufacturers. So when you think manufacturers, you think of the people that are making the gummies and the candies.
Well, the retail stores, 400. How many ABC stores are in Hampton Roads? Huh?
It used to be like 400 on the way.
There's about 5 within the.
Right,
mile or two.
really. What I'm saying, it's not going to make a dent in the black market.
Like 500 something in the state.
Yeah, the black market will always exist. I think they're just trying to minimize it. So I know that the percentages going from the taxes are pretty high, going to pre-kindergarten, and then the Cannabis Equity Reinvestment Fund. I believe it was 30% going to that, and if you say that may be changing. Public health programs only has 5%. Is there a need or a want from anybody to, because right now all we talk about are the good things about marijuana, cannabis. There's unintended consequences that also are negative. And I think it makes the police's job a lot harder for DUIs, and I feel like, has there been any talk about money going towards that?
There has not been. I was just looking because there was a bill that came, Republican Terry Austin, about issuing citations for marijuana and certain traffic offenses. So while he was talking, I was trying to see if any.
And I know there's an open container law.
Yeah, there is. I have not heard of any. However, they do have those several boards. So there's going to be the licensing body, but then there's several other boards, one which includes health and education. And that's a really important piece. Educating not only the community members that will be affected by it, but also educating about its effects. I think that falls under the health piece. But I think you bring up a good point. Again, it's just something to kind of bring up because it is a 283 pages that sits by my bedside. Okay. And I'm not in politics. And I know politicians, they don't read too much. I like to read. So to say that could be something that could be addressed, sure. Yeah, and get it while it's hot.
Right.
Because there's also talk that a lot of things are not going to be addressed, but we'll address it next go around, and eventually we'll get it right. But I like good impressions, which is why I'm here today, good first impressions. So I think one of the good first impressions was to consider all of those things, at least show some consideration to it. The biggest thing, the change that I'm seeing on that end is, again, the schooling piece. Making sure that the schools get involved in that equation and not just the social equity reinvestment fund, but kind of spreading them out a little bit for the tax revenue.
And do we have they talked about any fees for the application and
There's
the process?
There's been some chatter. Last I heard, it may have been 60,000. But again, that could change. Don't quote me. Everything is very fluid right now. We have a new House majority, and then it still has to go through Senate, and so they have a fight. But now is the time. And I told Randy I said, let's do it after Lobby Day, so I can really have some fresh insight as to what's coming down the pipe.
Maybe we can set up another meeting.
Yeah, I think if you're willing, we will definitely take you
You
up on
definitely
your
have
offer.
to stomp your yard a little bit.
Come back.
Get yelling.
I think once we get through this session and see maybe if some part of the dust will settle.
Yeah, if I hear anything interesting, but again, I really do encourage questions and or thoughts and concerns. Because as many of us are talking about it and approaching our legislators and, putting bugs in their ear, the more we can get heard, and then these things can be addressed in the final bill. Okay, and that's very important. All right.
I'm sorry, one last question.
No.
You're doing private individuals being able to retail cannabis. Has there been any talk of taking the ABC and letting? I'm confused about why Virginia wants to control the ABC, but marijuana or cannabis, they're going to let everybody apply for a license and do. It seems like this would be a great opportunity to get the ABC out there as well and probably make a lot more money from alcohol if we could have private.
So, if I'm understanding, Virginia is going to control the licensing process. And in controlling the licensing process, each applicant that applies for a license will go through a vetting process. And I'm told they're going to really, Neil is, he's a millionaire and he has all these businesses. And so, and him and the other, Rashida, I think they went to law school together or something. So they're going to be looking for, they're really going to be vetting these businesses, making sure they're from Virginia, making sure that the structure is right. So it's going to be a huge level of control. They're going to control, you're going to have an ID on probably everything that's being sold. They're going to want to know. I mean, that's the only way they're going to be able to collect their money. So I actually, the way I read the legislation, it's going to be heavily enforced, far more than with testing and everything, far more than alcohol. They set up the little shops for alcohol for the state and then they sell it. But they're able to get more money. When you start talking about Virginia, because my husband said the same thing, I bet you Virginia's going to try to just set up shop. You got real estate, you got the hassle, you got security. You can't put the money in the bank, right? Right?
Just so with that being said, if the state's taxing it, where does that money go since it's coming from marijuana? And how would that not be illegal to put into a bank?
I'm going to tell you like my dad would say, my name is Bennett, and I'm not in that. I was not in the room. I was not in the room when they have decided. No. I know the state wants that money.
That's probably why
And I know the airports look good in the states that have the money, and the roads look good, and the businesses are thriving, and there's in the deep cold, there's plenty of people around, and I know that 28 billion last year was reported. And I'm going to Arizona next to see what they're doing because it's trending upward. So that's a really good question.
I
But
want you to bring your dad next time.
yeah, He's a good guy. He's had some health problems, but he's still with us, and him and my mom both. I got a little bit old school in me, so excuse my language. But I am more than welcome to and open to coming back, and I hope I shared as much information as I can. My job is to educate, so we can do it right. All right?
Well, I can't thank you enough for being here. It's
No
been,
problem.
I think we've all enjoyed it. I think we all got educated, and I'm sure we'll take you up on it.
All right, start making some phone calls. Let's get it right. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.